Good morning, everyone. This is One Pretty Ricky, and joined with my co-hosts Kirsten Huovinen and Adam Martin. You're listening to the FI Recovery Radio. Super happy everybody's here. We're alive. This is awesome. Kirsten,
I think
how you
they
feeling?
fixed this mic.
Yeah, I was putting it down. I was like, I think we're okay.
I think that the problem is that people don't is that a word? Unloosen?
No, just lose
It's a word.
No, this loosen. If you unloosen, you tighten it.
Oh, yeah. If you loosen what they're not doing, I don't think they're loosening it before they move it, so then it just breaks.
right.
You know what that feels like, right? Yes. Anyway, Kirsten, how are you?
I'm great. I'm at the lake. We did fireworks last night. Well, Matt did. So I'm really glad that my husband loves fireworks because I don't really. So he went and now got some fireworks from Three Fingered Fireworks Company. And
Is that really the name of their company?
no, it's not. But that's what I
Great
call it
name.
because
That is
really
a
that's what you end up
solid
with.
name.
Yeah.
Like
yeah, and we
Should
also
ask me
got
for
we also got a special guest today, Jesse. He's from Jesse. Why don't you enter Helios?
Helios.
Helios.
I've heard so many pronunciations of the name, and people just like, and I'm like, it's Greek mythology. It's the Greek sun god. Like I thought everybody, but the one thing I paid attention to in school, I'm like, I remember Greek mythology. I'm like, oh, everyone should know this, right? But I'd have forgot like all the stuff everyone else was taught. So
That's funny.
The stuff that doesn't really help in the business
Yeah.
world.
it's
Pegasus.
graduation and like the degree and stuff.
Trying to
Yeah.
say Pegasus?
Pegasus. Pegasus. Phonics.
Peggy
I mean,
from
Phoenix?
accounting.
Phoenix. Yeah.
Phonics. Zeus.
Oh my God. Well,
Oh, now Odin.
did
Now
not
we're
get
talking
enough
Norse.
sleep.
right, Norse mythology.
Which
Mix
I've
them
always
all up.
really been
Yeah.
confused about the whole Odin and Zeus thing because one's Norse and one's Greek or whatever, but they're
Greek,
essentially the
yeah.
same.
Right, basically.
So anyway,
Yeah.
Jesse, go ahead, introduce yourself.
Yeah, sorry. There we go.
Hi, my name's Jesse Heffernan. I'm with Helios Recovery Services. I am a person in long-term recovery, a little over 22 years. I am a trainer, lead facilitator, and consultant. Helios has been around. We call our official birthday May the 4th, 2015, because it makes it easy to make a Star Wars holiday, which should be a federally, if not internationally recognized holiday. I don't understand why we're not there yet, but one can dream and advocate, right? What else do I say? Like, I didn't get any prompts, and I didn't have all my Skittles in the green room this morning, so I'm kind of pissed.
Maybe
Yeah.
a little about yourself.
Yeah. Well, let me
Like,
say
instead of the
this first, whatever. Kirsten's coming in perfect. We're having some breakup with you, Jesse. So I don't know if there's other devices connected, or if you might have to switch to audio or whatever on your screen or whatever. But we're having a little bit of trouble. It's been like that for like probably the last 5 minutes. So, but we'll just keep.
3. How
Yeah.
about that?
Oh, that's
Oh,
much
that's
better.
perfect. I don't know what you did, but you nailed it.
I was scared to go into the settings because of our experience last time, where everything just kind of went wonky.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna touch it. I'm not gonna do that. But I switched to my camera microphone, so
There we
there
go.
it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see if it works. All right. So Jesse, I know Jesse. I did a Minnesota peer support training with Jesse, and then also Randy Anderson from Bold North Recovery. Probably one of the best trainings I've ever done. We had a whole Ricky. We had a whole day dedicated to ethics.
Wow.
Yay!
Yeah,
Oh,
a whole day.
That makes
2
me so
days.
happy.
2 days.
2 days?
Should
2
be a
days.
2 days.
month.
That's a lot of ethics.
Ethics.
They had me come in on a Saturday.
You didn't teach ethics, did you?
Who? Me?
You, Adam.
Oh, listen. I'll teach ethics for an hour.
Yeah, that's about how much I'm gonna get. Yep.
Yeah. Ethics is definitely probably the most. It should be one of the most tuned in,
covered
trainings in any industry, not just peer support. But I'll tell you, Jesse, when you guys do training, if you're considering of adding modules, professionalism with peer support.
Yeah.
Like
So there's a 2-day professionalism training as well.
okay,
CR.
I think
Yep.
well just even like corporate professionalism, like you know, not. It's not. I mean, it's not against the law or whatever. It's not against, but like running around and like telling people, you know, the personal accommodations that you have with work or whatever, like can create kind of a hostile, you know, environment or whatever. And so,
give an example. That doesn't make sense.
well, just like
It's not like oddly vague, but like you've got some stuff behind it.
Let's get into this.
no, we're not gonna get into it.
I was like, I don't.
But like, if I came to work and was just like, I only have to work Monday through Thursday, and we get paid the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just, it's you know, there's special things that you make, circumstances that you make for people because you're trying to retain workforce, and you know sometimes it just creates a little bit of toxicity if you run around talking about it.
Right.
So.
It's kind of like talking about how much you get paid, and like you just don't do it.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
That comment was like the equivalent of like vague, but like nobody understands me.
right.
And you just put that on Facebook and you expect like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, that drives me nuts. Yeah.
It's so hard.
But they understand you on Facebook because
That's true.
You probably like I'll see people post on Facebook. They'll be like, "Yeah, that place sucks," and then everyone's like, "Yeah, you're right. They suck, but you got fired because you suck." You know, it's like,
Or it's like liking your own Facebook status.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, back on topic.
Is that
Jesse.
bad?
Jesse, switch over to audio on your settings and see if that will work a little bit better. You sound like
Switch
a
over to
robot.
audio.
Or just turn off
I'm
the
on this
video.
site.
I think it sounds fine to me. But
Oh,
that
does it?
doesn't
Maybe
matter,
it's
really.
us then.
That's
Yeah.
weird.
That would be weird if Kirsten comes in perfect and Jesse doesn't, but he comes in perfect to her.
Yeah.
You're
Well,
all perfect to me.
Well, if you guys are listening on the radio, thank you for tuning in. But if you're on Facebook, we also go on Facebook Live on our respective pages. Please, just in the comments, just let us know. Make sure show Jesse some love and let us know if you can hear us okay, because we want to make sure we get the best, gift of this show to you and be able to hear everything.
Yeah,
that we
if
have
we
to
can
talk
hear
about.
him, let's let him explain his story and
Yeah.
how he got into this jazz, so that we can start at grassroots. Because a lot of people
Yeah,
don't
'cause
know
we got
what
Jesse
peer
till-
support is.
We got Jesse till when? 8:30?
Mhm.
Okay. Jesse, why don't you just go ahead and get into it, man? On why we got connected again.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I give I like the origin story stuff, and it's kind of the brief synopsis of all that, and I look back and my story not very different, but also had its own stuff with what got me into the recovery field, like
Tell it. What's your story?
I've learned a lot about trauma and ACEs. It's not the test I get like the high score on or whatever. So there was some trauma stuff at the beginning, and then there was lack of adults who were trying to fix it. They thought they were fixing it, but they were just more like probably making it worse, right? They were being like, well, can you just act like other kids, and so on and so forth. This was before trauma informed care, right? So we weren't really asking people like, what happened to you? We were saying, what's wrong with you? And we still have some of those models floating around. And just trying to find my own ways to cope and deal with stuff. I was just thinking about this last week, and my junior high years are like when my mom got remarried and I got my first beer, right? And there was this rites of passage, and it was like, oh, well, all of a sudden things don't feel so bad anymore. And then eventually finding, other substances, and it was off the races for a number of years. But what I've come to the conclusion of today is that, one, gratefully, there were a lot of people in my life who were willing to plant seeds. And if you know anything about gardening, and I know a little bit about gardening, what's some of the best stuff that seeds grow in? It's manure, right? It's shit, right? So if you got to live with all this shit going on, and people are they're planting seeds along the way, eventually that stuff's going to start to sprout, right? I believe organizations like F5 and the RCOs and stuff like that are places where people start to cultivate, right? They start to get water a little bit. They start to realize that stuff can come up, but they need the space to be able to do it. They need an environment where they're going to be seen and heard and valued for who they are. And I think that's what like recovery centers. And I had some time with a few organizations, like, I helped with RCO development with Faces and Voices for Recovery for a little while. And, just seeing all these amazing, incredible places, that do this stuff. And part of the reason I reached out to you is your current governor and some of the legislation regarding anti-LGBTQ bills, and specifically the anti-trans bills. And part of my work in my recovery, I worked for this place, Our Goodwill Industries here in Wisconsin had a program called Harmony Cafe, and I was the program director for LGBTQ youth services for 8 years. So for
great.
8 years, I saw young people coming in, right, from Northeast Wisconsin, and hearing their pain, hearing all the stuff that was coming up, hearing that they couldn't live their true, authentic lives, they couldn't thrive, they couldn't do what they need to do, fear of being kicked out, fear of being rejected at school, in their church, in all these places, right? And we talk about like the external toxic stress, right? Because the problem isn't that a young person or that anybody whose gender identity is on the spectrum or their sexual orientation. That's not the problem, right? That's inherently who they are. And I believe that that's inherently good. Mm-hmm. It's the external stuff that starts to weigh in on people and can create problems and can start to create places where, like many of us, we have to take care of that external stuff somehow. And it comes out in mental health issues, substance use disorder, and suicide. I mean, I'd seen for years what we have in Wisconsin, the Youth Behavioral Risk Survey. And I remember when they first started asking the question about sexual identity. And then we were able to look at the data and be like, oh, what do you know? Like young people who don't identify just as heterosexual, like their suicide attempts and their mental health and substance use disorder and pregnancy are through the roof in comparison to their heterosexual peers. So, we made a lot of change. It's when I learned about advocacy and I started working in different avenues, not just within the cafe, but, going and presenting and teaching at schools. When I worked at Harmony Cafe, they're actually the ones who sent me to Connecticut. Goodwill had an amazing ongoing education program at the time. They sent me to Connecticut to become a recovery coach and trainer with the idea of bringing it back to Goodwill. Uh-oh, that happened.
Bless you.
Godzilla. And when I left there, when it closed down, I did become, that's when I opened up Helios and started working with Great Lakes ATTC and all this stuff. So all this to say, I look at the 400 some bills that are currently on the desks and on the floors in states around the country. And then I zoomed in because North Dakota has this huge Recovery Reinvented conference, right? Mm-hmm. And then I see the ties to this governor and to this legislative body who has passed discriminatory, hateful laws that are going to real world affect people. We are going to see real world impacts of these laws and how people are not able to access healthcare. And what do we think is going to happen, right? We think people are just going to magically not be who they are the next day. Like, oh, they passed this law. Yeah, right. So we have these white, privileged, out of control, mediocre men who are asserting ignorant and asinine stuff onto people, all these bills and this legislation onto people, and they're going to kill people and they're going to hurt people. And my thought on it is one, do not host a recovery conference because you don't understand recovery. You understand recovery and access for people with privilege. You don't understand what it means to actually serve and what it means to holistically approach recovery. And I've reached out to their Facebook and I just said, get out of the recovery field to Recovery Reinvented. I said, you don't belong here. You are actively participating in hurtful, discriminatory practices. And you need to leave. And it's my hope that all the organizations and the sponsors leave them as well. Right? I reached out to Microsoft and I said, did you know that this is going on? Like I tracked down, I found like this one guy who created this amazing design, like this pride flag that's got like 50 some kind of representations on it. And I'm like, you know how you rabbit hole and you're like, oh, this is his name. And I'm like, is it weird to message him on Instagram? Oh, well, I'm going to do it anyway. So I did. And I said, Microsoft is sponsoring this. And then of course, your governor put his bid in for, president. And then I found out, and this is weird too. And I don't get too much into conspiracy theories, but I'm a parent. So like, I believe they exist.
Let's go. But
this is weird. And I'm like, so I started talking all this shit, right? Like about Recovery Reinvented, the governor, and doing all this stuff. The next day, like my Facebook page for Helios Recovery is shut down. And I'm like, that's weird.
Oh, wow.
Like, why would that happen? Like I've done I don't really do a whole lot with the Facebook page. It's like one of the most benign pages in the world. And it's just down now. And I'm like, huh. So I don't want to get too conspiracy theory about it, but I imagine someone with that's a billionaire with some pull might just be like, you don't need that silly page anymore. Anyway, it's probably not real, right? We're not going to get all the X-Files on it. So that's my thought. Like, I mean,
yeah, let's talk about it. Let's
hear what you got to say.
Well, here's where I'm at. I'm deep down to my soul, I'm a libertarian, right? And so I believe that all people have rights, and we should fight for everyone's rights at every level. If I live in my house and people come there and tell me how I'm going to live or whatever, they can leave. Right. That's it's my property, my house. And I believe that Jesse has those same rights at his house. I believe Kirsten has those same rights at her house. And when we get into the marketplace, when we get into the public arena, all those rights have to clash together.
Right.
Right. And I'm a big fan of, like, if someone wants me to call them a doctor, right? If I'm like, hello, Mr. Ricky. Right. And you look at me and you're like, my name is Dr. Ricky. Right. I'm going to call you Dr. Ricky. Okay? If somebody comes to me and I'll be like, hey, dude, how's it going? And you're like, I'm not a dude. And I see you and you or whatever, I'm not going to call you a dude. Right? That's just, I'm a big fan of respecting everybody's personal rights, how they see fit for themselves. And so in North Dakota, it's kind of weird because there's a lot of libertarians, a lot of conservatives that believe those same things but don't follow suit. Right. Okay, where they believe that in individual freedom, unless it's against what they believe individual freedom looks like, right? If they think that it's your freedoms are embarking on theirs or whatever, then they don't believe in individual freedoms anymore. So that's where I stand with it. When it comes to, what's going on with what Jesse's seeing in North Dakota, this personally is in the peer support realm. Until Jesse mentioned something about it, obviously I have white privilege, right? And I'm a straight male, so I don't see these things until someone points it out. And I know that there are men and women with LGBTQ. If I screwed that up, I'm sorry, and I will make sure I say it correctly next time. That are in the peer support realm, and I have not seen them say anything. Right, so this is the first that I'm personally hearing of it, and if the conversations have happened, I apologize for not hearing them or not seeing them, and I will definitely make sure to see them. And I do know that the Recovery Reinvented office has heard Jesse. I know that The managing director, Jonathan, is taking it seriously. But there's obviously there's things that until they're ready to be public about it or until something can be said about it, like there's many people at play, right? And they want to make sure that, just like Jesse is doing, they want to make sure everybody has a voice first before they say anything about it. So doing surveys, talking to people with lived experience, talking to the governor, talking to, the first lady. There's a lot of people that need to have their voices heard before they just go out and have an opinion or make a decision. And I think Jesse could respect that, right?
Well, it's interesting when you say that, because then what I hear is like, okay, so we want to make sure we assume that like everyone's opinion has like equal merit on a topic, right? So we'll just get really divisive and we'll say religious belief systems have the same merit as someone's inherent gender identity or sexual orientation, right? And some people might say, well, they're both a choice. And I would argue scientifically that is vastly incorrect, right? Mm-hmm. And that someone's sexual orientation and gender identity is not and should not be like a bargaining chip or or something that needs to be discussed to see like what is the right thing to do. So now what we've done is we've created this kind of place where we're like, okay, well, your belief system is important. And so we want to know how you feel about how someone is inherently. And we're going to discuss other people's gender and their sexual orientation at length and even survey people like, mm-hmm. And so what I hear there is an even furthering of these practices of like singling out a group of people and wow, does our country have a history of that, right?
Well, let me clarify, Jesse. I'm not saying that they're going out trying to get a bunch of opinions. I'm saying that what they're doing is they're bringing it to the table, right?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Okay. Yeah, because everybody knows. I mean, I guess maybe I don't know. I was raised by a single mom who loves everybody, right, for who they are and what they are or how they identify, mm-hmm. right? That's and I believe that should be America, right? America was the land where we took in everybody. Depending on, the viewpoint of that, there was probably different reasons that they did that back then.
Right.
But I like to believe that we are the land of liberty and that there's people out there like Jesse, like myself, like Ricky, Kirsten, that are fighting for all people to have all, rights and all access to things in the world. But there's people out there that don't, right? And I think that mm-hmm. there's different levels of like agreement, right? Like me and Ricky probably agree on 95% of the stuff out there, right? And me and Kirsten maybe 97, right? And then me and Jesse, maybe there's 80, right? And I think that we get so fixated on the people that agree with us more on when we don't agree on something than fighting against those people who believe 5%. You know what I mean? And I think that this is the positions that some of the people, our leaders, get put in. And I'm not saying that I know what Doug, believes in, but I know that for a fact that there's probably 80% of the stuff that we publicly agree on. And then there's about 95% that we agree on. And I think sometimes we have to do things to get put in a position to be able to make decisions at a higher level. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm completely wrong on that, and Jesse probably have a great rebuttal for it on it or whatever. But I know for a fact that there's things that we all agree on publicly, and then there's probably things that we agree on that we're a little scared to come out about because of the support and loss of position that we would get. And then if that happens, we won't be able to do the things that we really want to do. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen the movie? Have you ever seen the movie that with John Goodman and the aliens? You know which ones I'm talking. You know what I'm talking about. Yes. The aliens take over. They create a government. Uh-huh. Like we're going conspiracy theory now. Let's go, Jesse. they create this government and the people become enslaved, right? And then there's people, right, that end up getting authoritarian positions in this alien government. Right. And John Goodman ends up going up to the mothership because he got appointed to be the city councilman or the mayor or something like that. And what they didn't know is that when they were bringing him up, John Goodman had a bunch of bombs inside him, and then he just blew up the government. I'm going to jail.
Was that V? What movie was that?
What? Oh man.
We're gonna Google it.
I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It's a really good movie.
It doesn't matter. Nobody knows what I'm talking about. Anyways,
Captive State.
Captive State.
Yeah,
that's the
I've
name.
I've never
of the
seen that.
You need to watch that because I was like, it's like the sleeper cells that are trying to like they just do and check the box on everything until they get put in a position of authority and then they change everything.
Right.
You know. So.
And Kirsten, I think you had a question.
Oh, that's a terrible B movie. Anyway,
I loved it.
And I'll be honest, I don't understand all of like political stuff because I don't know, it's overwhelming. But I absolutely think that anything that is excludes anyone for any reason is probably not headed in the right direction. I hesitate. I was wondering what your thoughts were on like, because you had mentioned like shutting the whole peer support thing down in North Dakota, and I was just wondering, okay, what was the
conference?
Okay, the conference.
Yeah.
Okay, and I even though we disagree with their opinion, the idea that they're even starting to talk about addiction as not a moral issue is a beautiful thing, but they have a long way to go with you know, I don't know, the crazy idea that somebody could choose something, a sexuality or gender. It's just who you are, you know. But to to make it harder to access any kind of recovery in any form, maybe I'm totally not understanding you, but I was just wondering what your thoughts were on that. Like, to shut down the conference, would that limit the ability to carry the message of recovery?
Yeah, so I think that what happens, and I've done this too, is that like...
I think now you're frozen. Yeah, there we go.
Oh.
Well, he's good on our side now.
Yeah. You both froze for me for a moment, so I don't know. There's this is actually the NSA tapping in, and they're talking about alien conspiracies. They're onto us. Yeah. So now that Big Brother is completely in the room.
Only in this radio show can you talk about what we're talking about and end up on alien.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah. We can hear you.
Try over here. I can't hear you.
Oh, and real quick, Jesse, I know you haven't done it a lot, but about 10 minutes ago,
I'll just guess what you're saying. Sure.
You might have said a word that you can't say on radio, so just make sure that you.
I forgot that we're on radio.
Yeah.
Not just like a live Facebook.
Yeah.
So the FCC really is watching.
The aliens took over.
And okay. Well,
they just cut Kirsten out.
They did. So yeah, if you end up being fined for that, let me know and we'll do like a Kickstarter or something. Take care of that.
Keep this alive.
Yeah. Oof. I think it's just before the show started, like we were dropping some swear bombs, and I was like, oh, so that's cool, huh? And I just kind of kept with it, and you all switched to like professional radio mode. I just kind of kept it like, cool, I'm bringing this.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I should wait for her to come back.
No, go ahead. She'll jump on. I think she was having troubles.
So I get it. Like, I think, and again, like what I did too is like recovery became my only focus, my only issue that like I believed, right? I'm like, okay, this needs to be the full thing. And we call that like single issue voters, right? Whereas if you were to look at everything down the ballot or on the docket, like you might say like, oh, I might change my mind on something like this, or I might change my mind on a candidate, right? I think a good example of that is, when people like in Las Vegas, they actually, in Nevada rather, they had a political action party. It was like a recovery focused one, right? And they did a whole lot of surveys with individuals, and they found, and there's a lot of extensive kind of reports about this, but they found that like when one candidate was willing to support recovery funding and all these different measures and do all this stuff, like people were willing to jump parties, right? Or they were willing to jump parties this way or that way based on like these broader topics and situations. And so when I look at the recovery community, I can be like, yep, this place supports recovery. But then over time, I've had to deepen and broaden my definition of recovery to not just be, is someone abstinent or does someone have access, right? Because the minute that I go below that, I start to see how much inequity there is in access, how much inequity there is in all these different areas. And the roots of these things, there are several roots that are not just based in the stigma of substance use disorder alone, right? So I believe that there's this kind of like trifecta of the perfect storm of where we're at with recovery today. And normally I just do this on trainings, but here we go. So one is the drug war, right? If you've not seen the movie, The People versus Billie Holiday, I strongly recommend it. It talks about how our country, like when segregation was removed and when they started talking about like, addressing Jim Crow South, there was this jazz musician, Billie Holiday. She sang this song, Strange Fruit, that talked about lynchings in the South. And the government at the time actively found a way to continue to discriminate against Black and Latino populations through the use of the drug war, right? So the drug war is inherently racist and classist, right? It was specifically, and we still see that today, right? We still see people locked up. And in Wisconsin, disproportionately locked up based on race, right? So we had the drug war that kind of started everything. And that gave everybody this kind of lens that like drug addiction equals criminal behavior, right? So we've had a generation and a half now of people just viewing things through this drug war lens. And then of course we had like the iatrogenic harms, that's from the ethics training of how we treated people inside institutions, right? And so we would say like, oh, you've got a drug addiction or you've got this problem, like maybe electroshock therapy or involuntary institutionalization. The entire peer movement, if we look back at it, right, is predicated on the idea of ex-patients creating space for themselves and starting that nothing about us without us thing, right? But we've had years and decades of like institutional harm inside all of this, right? And then I think the last part is like AA did a lot of great stuff and they got a lot of stuff right, but they also like isolated themselves and their anonymity became this shell in this bubble of like Fight Club, right? Like we don't talk about what happens outside of here, right? So a lot of people were left to make up what happens, right? And they kind of like silenced the one arm with Marty Mann and the whole legislative aspect of it and really just focused on like the tight knit, like nobody knows what's going on in here. So to me, those three things combined then kind of spread out. And so like the roots of a lot of this stuff, like we don't address the systematic misogyny, sexism, racism, and classism, which those things oftentimes, right, are the systems that allow for traumas and stuff to happen that lead to substance use disorder and mental health issues, right? So if we're going to just say, well, they've got recovery, that I think is very narrow. And if we just say like we've got a conference that's like, hey, we're talking about access, I believe, because I think everything is interconnected. If we're not addressing all the social inequities at the same time, we're not addressing recovery. It's not a single issue thing. They're all woven together. And by just like kind of having this parade of like, look at all the great recovery stuff we're doing, right? And then not addressing all these deeper issues, it's a flash in the pan. It's not going to last, right? And so a conference that builds itself off of like, oh, we've got all this access now and we're going to throw ourselves a big party. Look how much movement we've had, right? How much movement have we had? What has been and it's not just saying like, well, we can like look at the rates of like people's access to care. Are you talking to everyone? Are you talking to folks who are the most disadvantaged and the most hurt by current legislation and policies, right? And that's like the problem with these things is oftentimes we only get data and feedback from the people we want to get data and feedback from. So to me, it's got to be broader, it's got to be bigger, and within the peer space as well, right? So
I'd agree.
that's my long answer.
No, I agree with that. I think that if we want to make change, we need to create at least committees with lived experience in those specific areas. Particularly here, the biggest, maybe not the biggest. This is me from my lens, right? But Native American, right, is probably the most discriminated against people in my opinion, in North Dakota. And I would say that that trans is very close, right? And so, but I will say that I've seen a lot more hostility towards trans people in the last couple of years than but there's been a lot more systemized effort towards Native Americans. So so a Native American rights committee, like we have those, right? Like we even have ones that are sponsored by the government, but we don't have anything for, gay, lesbian, trans, none of that. And I'll tell you, there's a comedian local here, Native American gal, that she said that every time she gets up to the stage, she's like, I'm, by far the most discriminated person in North Dakota. I'm Native American. I'm a woman. I'm gay. I'm like, and she goes on, and people laugh at it, and that's her shtick, right? But it's true. And so it's crappy that the only place that it's okay to say that is at a comedy club, right? So I'm super on board with it, Jesse, and I think that being in North Dakota for my entire life, we've always been, maybe because of communications, maybe because of connections, maybe because of education, whatever the case may be, we're always 10 years behind everyone else on everything, not just policies, but like Cherry Pepsi didn't come here for 10 years after it was released. You know what I mean?
That explains a lot.
Yeah.
You got to add another list onto the ACEs now. You got adverse childhood experiences, like we didn't get Cherry Pepsi.
Yeah, I remember when my babysitter's daughter came back from Virginia or something like that, and she had a Cherry Pepsi. I was like, what is that? And it didn't show up in the gas stations for another 10 years. It was ridiculous. So
I remember it was 2000. It would have been, so I was in treatment in 2000. Yeah, at the end of 2000 into 2001. And I was at a meeting. I was at a 12-step meeting, right? We're in one of those old school, AA, the walls are yellow because of everyone smoking in the meeting. This was back then, right? And I turn around and I look, and one of the guys I'm in treatment with has got this little silver can, and he's just drinking it. And I turn around, I'm like, what are you doing? You can't have that in here. What is that? And he turns around and he shows it to me like a commercial. He's like, it's called Red Bull, dude. It's amazing. And this was 2000. I'm like, what is this, right? Sure enough, right? I remember being at a convention, and we had a Red Bull distributor in our room at a convention for recovery. We were the most popular room ever. But again, I just think about these trends and the way these things come in, and how much we catch up on this stuff and everything. Yeah, I can't wait for energy drinks to start sponsoring recovery events if they don't already.
Just a different addiction.
Well, I can't. I mean, we already had the pharmaceutical companies doing it, so it's not probably too far before you see CBD and marijuana companies and sponsoring it. I mean, it's the same thing as local, because in North Dakota you cannot own betting or whatever unless you're a nonprofit, right? And so or the profits go to the nonprofits. And it's funny when I see treatment centers that are sponsoring stuff at the Northern, or like the blackjack tables, and then they accept people for gambling addiction.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's almost like they want to get their name there,
Right.
so then when you lose your money, you're
like,
like,
it's going to this
I should
charity."
go there.
Oh yeah. Yep. I've had a plenty of like,
the
oh
other
yeah,
way
I
around,
definitely
yeah.
funded the Boys and Girls Ranch. Let's see, it's the Legion, just all the different. I was like, yep.
Yeah.
They got their funding for the month, which is it's terrible the way to think about it from that that perspective.
I mean, I'm
but-
glad the money is going there, but
Yeah.
sometimes I feel it's like a drug dealer buying backpacks. It's just.
Yes. Oh, I mean, if we're gonna open up that can, how much time do we have, right?
Oh, they ain't ready for it, Jesse. They ain't ready.
I know. I agree with you. Like, I think we've seen the mitigation of pharmaceutical companies, and we would say the same thing. It's like the drug dealer, donating a ton of money or going to meetings before they go to court, and then they come in and be like, "But look at all the good I've done," right?
Yeah.
And you're like, "Oh yeah, look at all the good you've done." And we know that they've sponsored things all over the place. We have the Tavern League here in Wisconsin, maybe the most powerful lobbying group in the world. We can sell liquor licenses for more than we sell like brick and mortar buildings, right? Because like alcohol is all here.
Yeah.
And sure enough, they've tried to sponsor recovery events and recovery walks and stuff like that. And it's an interesting question.
Ricky's got to do a commercial. So Jesse, why don't we just? I appreciate you coming on today. We gave you 12 extra
thank you.
minutes because we love you and we appreciate the advocacy and the work that you're doing. We'll have you on again soon, and we'll touch base. I appreciate you, man.
Hey, thanks so much for
thanks
having
so
me.
much.
Talking. I really appreciate it too.
All right, we'll talk soon. Go ahead with your commercial,
yeah.
Ricky.
All right. So if you're just tuning in, this is KRFF 95.9 LPFM. This is F5 Recovery Radio, and this is your co-host, One Pretty Ricky, with Adam Martin and Kirsten Huovinen. So we want to thank all of our community listeners who tune in, but we also want to just give a special ask to our business owners, managers, and nonprofit organizations. If you're considering advertising, why not learn what underwriting is on a nonprofit community radio station called Radio Free Fargo? So if you want to learn more about what underwriting is, please contact them on their website at www.radiofreefargo.org or on their profile on Facebook. Let the community know that you support community radio here at 95.9 LPFM. Yeah. So that was awesome. Like, I really appreciate Jesse's
really great.
perspective and really being able to broaden the perspective that I'm sure, not a lot of people have really even thought about, to really think of it from recovery perspective, thinking of recovery from a much broader perspective than just gambling or drinking or drugs and other things.
Well, I
That's
think that
really cool.
maybe in the future, I know we have a local human relations commission. I don't know if he's the chair or the vice president, but I served on it with Cody Severson.
Oh yeah,
from Community Uplift. He's kind of the go-to, at least from my perspective, the go-to advocate for these kinds of policy issues or whatever. So maybe in the future we can reach out to him and see if he'd want to come up and kind of give a double lived experience, being that he's from North Dakota, lives in North Dakota, and has been an advocate for this. So
I'm gonna write them down. Cody Severson.
Just for everybody who's listening that doesn't really understand what peer support is, can we just explain what that was so that we have a basis of what we just talked about, kind of?
Absolutely, Kirsten. What is your perspective on peer support? What is that? You can talk about it.
Peer support is like people in recovery, and they go to this training, and then they can help others in recovery through organizations. I think anything that is trying to help others in recovery is headed in the right direction. It's a great thing. I love that ethics is covered. I think that's super important. And professionalism and just keeping peer support specialists safe is the biggest thing. But anything that, because there's so many different ways to get to recovery, and so for one person that might work, another something else might work, but it's been beneficial so far.
Kirsten, are you inside of a barrel?
I am. Yep. I live in a barrel, and they let me out every once in a while to clean.
And these are my monkeys.
Yeah. No,
I get it.
Thank you.
Barrel o' monkeys. Okay.
I'm
I'm going to start calling you
at my
Scott.
in-laws' cabin, and this is it's called the boathouse, and Matt and I and the kids, there's 2 rooms out here. We sleep out here. It's like a resort out here. It's insane. They're amazing. But, so yeah, we sleep in a barrel.
Nice. So are you're in a boathouse, like out on the water?
Yeah.
Oh.
We sleep above the boathouse it's an actual room, like there's a bed and all the messy stuff, but
I was expecting to see Matt all laid out on the bed.
He really did think that would be hilarious.
Yes,
so
I knew we were the same, cut from the same cloth. Just whatever you do, don't put the camera on the bed. I'm going to be here naked.
Yeah, he thought that would be a good guest speaker.
It'd be double guest speaker. Oh, man. That's clean, right? That's clean. That's clean. PG still.
Yeah,
okay.
That was good. Yeah.
Yeah,
that was really interesting. I'm glad we talked with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like Jesse. He's not just a big advocate for the issues that we're kind of confronted, with right now. But he's, pure support, recovery, Hunter, one thing that I do, and we're kind of seeing it with policy for sober homes. There was like a policy that was going to go forth where we were going to put all the sober homes on some kind of list or something, and put it on the state website. And then, Judith from Hope Manor went and fought against it because it was like, if you put all of them on the list, then you're saying they're all equal, right? And you're not going to put any information about each one, And it sounds like when she, approaches like, well, we all have rights to be on that list or whatever. We want people to know about us. But I actually agree with her. I don't think that there should be a list, on the website, because there are, like Kirsten said, there's people who are doing stuff that have never been through ethics training, and some of the things they do in those other sober homes where they kick people out for certain reasons or whatever, I'm not going to get into it, is not fair, right? But then on the same time, if someone is in the house that's really, really toxic and they're using all the time, you should be able to ask them, to leave. So I think that there has to be a variety of sober homes. There's got to be ones that are not medicated assisted treatment, because there's people that's a trigger for them when they move into there, right? Then there's got to be ones that are medicated assisted treatment. There's got to be some that are religious, right? Then there's some that, like, I like having the variety, and then that way people with their own beliefs can go to the places that they want to go to get the most safe environment. If state governments get involved, they all look the same. And it takes away the environment that was going to produce the most in that individual and activate them into recovery. That's my opinion. And so I was against the list. I'm against any kind of list, when it comes to or any kind of mandates that get handed down outside of discrimination, right? Which would make the argument that medication is for disabilities, and if you're not accepting people because they take certain medications, that is a form of discrimination. And so I believe that in the next 4 years, you're going to start seeing some reforms come down with sober homes and treatments and stuff like that in North Dakota. So be ready for it.
Which I think is a lot of...
Unfortunately, go ahead, Ricky.
No, you're good. I was saying that I think that's a lot of that perspective that Jesse was kind of was bringing and talking about, of those 400 some odd bills about just various aspects of recovery. Like, things are obviously changing and because our culture is moving. you can argue both ways. You can say your culture is moving forward. You can say moving backwards. All the different things. Like obviously, it's becoming more of a topic. It's becoming more something to speak on. So I just hope that as we continue to evolve, and as Adam said, like 4 years from now or whatever it is, whatever the timeline is, that things will be changing. The hope is that we're always evolving, but that we're going to always evolve better. At least in this particular perspective, in this particular time. Like as we talked about, like peer supports in and of itself, the amount of training and the other things, like it was so, I mean, it's been around like a long time, but it's gotten obviously significantly better as things have progressed, as we're continuing to like, oh, okay, maybe we do need to have ethics. Maybe we do need to talk about professionalism, like all these things that were not even on anyone's radar 30 years ago. I can't even remember when peer support specialist, when that word or that kind of term even first became. But the hope is that at least that we are progressing better and that we can allow shifts to happen that are going to be for the greatest amount of good. It's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be, it's impossible as humans. Like there's no way we can have like everyone is going to be happy. Like we're going to present this one thing and it's going to cover everybody, every culture, every belief, every opinion. Everyone's going to be like, yay, kumbaya. And, that's not possible. But I just hope that there's at least, I mean, I can only speak for North Dakota because I live here. Like I hope that we can at least have that conversation and that, as Jesse said, that people will listen and be willing to like, okay, let's have a discussion about it, whether, nothing's going to happen overnight. Recovery reinvents is not just going to stop. Right. But at least that hopefully that the people who are in those positions, as I know that they're doing, that they're going to have those conversations. They're going to just address it and be like, hey, your opinion matters. We want to do something different. How can we make it better? How can we, instead of just like shut it all down, it's like, all right, no, like how can we grow and get better? And hopefully that we'll have more people willing to have that conversation, because I feel like a lot of times when we're going into rooms, we're talking to different people about our recovery story, like, oh, okay, cool. Adam's in recovery, Ricky's in recovery, Kirsten's in recovery, doing all these things, but they really don't get it. They really don't understand. And sometimes they're not really trying to like, oh, okay, that's cool for you. I'm really glad that you're sober. Like, well, no, like let's dive into how I got sober and why I'm still staying sober and all the other things. Oh, no. I don't want to, all of a sudden it's like, okay, I was willing to give you this concession to go this far, but I'm not going to take it any farther. I don't want to actually make myself change. I'm just happy that you change.
Yeah, you're going to get me started. I think that we define a lot of the environment based off a few people.
Sure.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For example, I think that people genuinely, like a good chunk of people, genuinely. Did you just mute me?
Nope.
Oh, what was that?
I muted.
Oh, that mutes you.
Oh, you're on.
Oh, I thought that mutes all of us. Oh, well, now you're muted.
Oh,
now you're not muted.
Yeah.
I was about to say something really profound, and then Ricky screwed it up. Anyway, I think most people, if you are willing to sit down and have a cup of coffee, most people are willing to do that, right? I think, I'm not talking about everyone. The ones that we're defining the environment on are those few people that are like posting memes about anti-whatever, right? And then you see them and then you're just like, oh, I guess all conservatives are that way, or all liberals are that way, or if you're not updated on information, Joe Biden, right? Back in 96, put more black people in prison based off the way he was voting than ever. And now he's considered like whatever he's considered, just not that anymore. But I know guys personally that are in prison because of that bill, the 96 Crime Act or whatever it was. Juveniles were getting defined as super predators, for stealing a car when they were 16 and going to maximum security prisons, right? That's like, I think there's more to than just coming out and saying I made a mistake. People lost their lives, and now you're the president of the United States. right? You could say the same thing about some of the stuff that Trump did, Obama, every one of them, right? and a lot of people come out later and they apologize and it's like, oh, well, he's progressive. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I think that, and I guarantee you, back in that time, during 96, if you were trying to have a cup of coffee with him, he probably was one of those people that was posting memes and then shifted.
Right.
Who knows if he still believes that stuff or whatever, but he knows what got him elected, right? And so I don't think that you can always define, based off of, who a person is at that point in time, because people change, But I also think that we have to, we can't have one policy, like you said, that, is across the board that's going to benefit everybody.
Right.
You're right. I mean, let's say we created a policy, be kind.
Right.
You have to be kind. Oh, well, that just infringed my First Amendment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, no matter
that's true.
what, you have to love my son was asked when he was in first grade, if you were president, what would you do? And he said, I would make everyone like each other. And I was like, it sounds cute, right? And you're like, oh, that's awesome. And then it's like, well, how do you do that? Through law.
Right.
Well, if you don't like me, you're going to prison.
Right.
You know what I mean? Now you just became a dictator.
Yep.
Right. So there's no, we're just trying to do the best we can to get to and kind of clear out the wreckage on the sides or whatever, just to get to more people having freedom, more people getting access, more people, whatever, is my hope.
Right.
But it doesn't always happen fast. So,
yeah.
Amen.
That's true. Amen.
Jesse asked if
I know,
we have
you know the right answer.
Yeah, Jesse asked if we have a NAR here, which is that National Recovery Home thing or whatever. Part of that list that they were going to do was the state was going to mandate that we became members of NAR.
I remember, yeah.
And which, okay, but it costs like $1,000 a year or something like that. And, places like maybe Hope Manor and F5 and a couple others might be able to do that. But there's a lot of sober homes that are just like a family who bought a house and is just trying to be helpful, right? And as long as they're not discriminating, I think that they can't afford to pay that, So we have Judith, actually Megan Mann is the executive director for the National Sober Living Association in North Dakota. And we're a member of that, and then there's a bunch of others that are members kind of throughout the U.S. But that's based out of here, and that's like $50 a month, or something like that.
Super
and
affordable.
They do audits and they do education and they do, all that stuff. So that's the one we're with.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, with our last minute and a half, 90 seconds, give or take, Kirsten, anything you want to share and talk about before we close and get on out of here?
I don't know. It's so overwhelming, really, to think about all the things, because then it's like, is this conference funded by this person? Does that skew the conference and blah, 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 all that jazz. But just be kind. It's not a law, but it's a good idea. And make your little part of the world better and advocate for those people that don't have voices. Just keep advocating, That's about all I got. Otherwise, I'm going to go suntan.
I like it.
Yeah, the last thing I would say is you don't always have to have an opinion, right? There's a big difference between opinions and advocacy, right? Advocating for others and my opinions about others are two different things, right? And so I think lived experience is king, and they should be the people that are at the forefront. So,
yep. So we want to thank, again, everyone for tuning in. We truly appreciate you. We, of course, want to thank Jesse Heffernan for tuning in. He's from Helios Recovery. If you want to find out more about his amazing organization, you can check them out online, heliosrecovery.com, or you can find them on Facebook and, the various social media, which I think they still have. And haven't gotten shut down. But again, please tune in next week. We're going to be back live here on the radio and as well on Facebook at 8 a.m. And we're going to be joined with another special guest from Sean Wilson from dream.org. So we're looking forward to having him on the show. And as always, this is F5 Recovery Radio with One Pretty Ricky, Kirsten Huovinen, Adam Martin. Thank you so much for tuning in and for being here with us. And please have the best day and enjoy another day in recovery.